Hello and welcome to a new episode of Jaw Jacking with James, and we're going to go straight forward into our part 3 of appreciating classic films, but the one caveat being is that this one's going to be all about classic war films, long-standing classics, say like All Quiet on the Western Front, or The Fighting Irish, or any other ones that are, made back then and up until some relatively bit newer but still old war films that were made in the 60s and 70s. And even the 80s, but at that point, some of them kind of had a tonal shift. But I want to try to stay focused on classic war films that usually would, some of them were in color, but they had a tone that was more in line with kind of a more patriotic view of the film, and was more of a hype kind of thing to get people excited and motivated about what was going on and what they were doing, and really is a just a big show of heroism and whatnot. But there are a few films mixed in that aren't depicting it as a glorification of war, but really trying to say something. Like when you watch the original version of All Quiet on the Western Front, the first part of the film is all about glory about it and glorification, but once they actually get to fighting, the glory goes away, and it quickly becomes a living hell for them. But another really great film about classic film about the duality of both glory and hardship is something I want to talk about because it's important this month, because it was the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and I'm talking about the Longest Day. That was made in 1962, and really, it's funny. I was gonna do this earlier, but earlier in the month, but it didn't work out for me. So I want to try to, while it's still June, get it done, and try to get the video out like I am right now, and get it out there to everyone. It's also funny that I finally have on my review, my Instagram review page, which is my second account besides my main account. I like earlier in the month had started a review and had it all sorted out, but I kept getting off the computer or doing something else, and it just sat there on the screen. And then when I finally finished it, hours and hours later, Instagram was like, "Oh, this is an old post. We can't post this now." And I was like, "Fuck! I had it ready." So a few days ago, not too long, I finally just sat down and typed all of it out, what I could remember, what I did like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and finally posted it up there, and it's up there, and I'll link it here on the podcast and on YouTube. So hopefully some people can see it. Yeah, it's one of those really great films I like to see. I've always been a big fan of war epics, whether they be your Lawrence of Arabia's, which is a very, very long movie. I think, only a few years ago, I finally saw it from beginning to end. Oop, you have to excuse me, my many, many cables I have all over are getting crossed. Oopsie-doo. Okay, we're good now. But anyway, Lawrence of Arabia, yeah, like, just a few years ago, I finally was able to watch Lawrence of Arabia from beginning to end, and because before then I would always either pick it up at a different point in the film and still watch it, or it would just get sidetracked and didn't finish it. Not that I didn't like the movie. I actually really love Lawrence of Arabia. It's just I never finished it because it's a long fucking film. It's like 3 hours long, and it has an intro, a intermission, and then an outro. Back when movies did that, and it's still a really well made film. It's a really long film, but it's well worth it to watch because it has to. Well, it's basically just going off the diary of Lawrence, and has some Hollywood twist to it because if you actually go into about Lawrence ever, T.R. Lawrence, don't know exactly how his first name is. I think it's, you know who I'm talking about. I can't remember his exact, initials before Lawrence. But you actually read it. I've read a few parts to it, and yeah, he was an oddball, and they had to make sense of a diary of the ramblings of some oddball from World War I, who was also really gay, but I don't hold that against him. It's just one of those things you can't overlook it. He was a weird guy and he was gay, but he still did his duty, as it will, back then for king and country. But moving on, yeah. If there was ever another really good classic war film that isn't as long and is a lot easier to digest, and it's one of my personal favorites, I would and should do a review of it too. Is there's this film made and it was 1943. It has Humphrey Bogart in it, so it's definitely worth a watch for watching him. It's called Sahara from 1943, and it was one of those. It has the hallmarks of a propaganda film, but made during that time to sell war bonds. But the thing that sets it apart is the fact that it's a smaller story with bigger stakes, self-contained within the movie. I mean, it's got Humphrey Bogart in it. It's got a bunch of other really good minor actors, some good character acting, and it takes place in North Africa during the North African campaign, which doesn't have enough movies about it and should have more, but there are quite a few older North African campaign war films out there. It's just there should be more made with today's technology, so it looks much better. And maybe like, how they did with Band of Brothers in the Pacific. Get HBO on it to make a, extended mini series on the North African campaign, because it's something that gets overlooked, and I think it should be, drawn out a little bit more. I mean, they were fighting there for almost 3.5 years of the war. Might as well, get a little bit more exposure to it. But anyway, yeah, Sahara takes place in North Africa in 1943, because they mention the Battle of El Alamein, and Humphrey Bogart has two other guys with him, and they're in a General Grant tank. It explains in the intro that they sent a small amount of American troops ahead of the main force of American troops to gain experience for the rest of the army, so they could have better training for the rest of the troops. And they're part of a small tank detachment, and he has a General Grant tank, which is a odd tank in itself, but apparently it was still used quite extensively for a good chunk of the war. It was kind of a stopgap tank. I mean, it had a big box frame with a cannon in the hull of the tank, and then a smaller turn on top of it. It was an intermediate tank before they got the main tank that is a lot more famous, the Sherman tank. So I know a lot about tanks, so that's why I know so much about it. But anyway, yeah, they are a tank crew there, American tank crew under British command, and they're basically retreating, and they find a bunch of British Commonwealth forces, and they find a few other guys. They capture a German pilot, and then they also find Italian. They also get an Italian officer in it. It's a really good film, and they defend a watering hole from a bunch of Germans that need water. And it's a very good small film, contained within a bigger picture. Funny enough, the movie got remade with some of the same minor actors into a western about some American cavalry that are holding back some I don't know if they were meant to be Apache or whatnot. I've only seen the film. I haven't sat down and watched it, but I should. But all they did was remake Sahara, except it didn't have tanks, and it wasn't during World War II. And the real only difference is that they changed it's Germans are now the Indians. The U.S. Armored Corps is now the U.S. Cavalry. The one guide soldier is now a little Indian boy, and it was really weird reuse of a plot lines to make another film, and it's kind of weird. But one of these days I got to sit down and watch it. One of these days, got a lot of things on my plate I got to watch, but I'll eventually get to it. But I definitely recommend Sahara. It really holds together with how it's a good survival in a war situation film. And the main draw is, of course, that Humphrey Bogart is in it. It also got a remake for that was a made-for-TV movie with John Belushi in it. And I only found out a few months ago that they made a remake film of that, and I'm like, really? And I haven't seen it, but maybe I should try and see that too to compare and contrast. But it's just an odd, no disrespect to John Belushi here, but I just don't. I just don't see it. Him in a war movie. But I could be wrong. You know, he's a good actor, but it's mostly he does good. Sitcom comedy roles. So it's a little odd to see him in that. But let me think. There's another in terms of another good propaganda film, but it's meant to be historic, but at the same time it's non-historic in terms of it being historically inaccurate as fuck. There's another smaller film called Wake Island, where it, in its own intro, retells the true story of what happened to the defenders of Wake Island. And it does have some truth. There was a Wake Island. It did have Marines on it. And that's about it. It got the one part where they held fire on their shore batteries and then shot at the Japanese and did damage to them, but just about almost every other thing about it is historically inaccurate. Oddly enough, there was a documentary made about Wake Island where they had actual, veterans that were on Wake Island, and they were asked, did you see that film? What did you think of it? And one of the veterans just says, well, we didn't have a dog, which is hilarious. Well, I do like that film, Wake Island, but the one thing you got to take is that it was a film made of its time, to get people hyped to buy war bonds, and I understand it for that, but outro, it is a very historically inaccurate film, and some parts in it are quite, corny and hokey and stuff, but it's still an enjoyable watch. There are a few other films made in that time. There's another one there are a lot of old World War II films with John Wayne in it, and a few of them I do really like The Fighting Seabees. That's always good to watch. Got John Wayne in it, and it was all about the naval construction battalions in the Navy, and to give them a better publicity and improve recruiting, they called them the Seabees. Trying to think of another one where I think it's called Back to the Philippines or Back to Manila or something like. Wait, hold on. Let me just look it up real quick. Let me pause and I'll get right back. Sorry about that. I had to do a quick Google search, and it was called Back to Bataan, and and John Wayne is part of the Filipino forces there, and the battle goes through the motions of the U.S. losing the battle, and him and his small force that he has under his command that are Filipino scouts. They become guerrillas, and I enjoy it for what it is, but there are a few parts in it, especially where they stop just so one of the civilians can tell him what to do, and she's a school teacher, and she just babbles on about how there'll be dishonor, and you should always do what's right, and blah blah blah. I'm like, lady, we don't have to do anything you say. And the film comes to a complete stop just so she can ramble on about basically just guilt tripping him into attacking on her behalf because she said so, even though she has no authority, because she thinks she's more important. What? Lady, shut up. Yeah, that's one part that I've always didn't like about that film, but the rest of the film I really love, and because it's always watching old John Wayne films is always a win for me, and but once you get to a certain point, like there are a few older films that don't have that glorification. Like another one of my favorites is Bridget Romagan, which breaks the tropes of some older films, but in a good way, where it's late war, and it's all about the first bridge that U.S. forces were able to take at the Rhine, and it's really well done and is pretty gritty, and definitely worth a watch to see it. And it's got a lot of really great action in it and a lot of really top-notch actors in it. But for me, it's like as long as the war film is well made and keeps me interested, I have no problem watching it. I'm trying to think of a really bad war film that I've seen, and I'm trying to think. I can't. Yeah, I can't think of any ones I didn't like. The only ones I can think of are like low budget ones. Like there's this one called The Tank. It was something with tanks, and it was all about a tank crew, and it was this low budget war film, all about a tank crew, and I think it was called Tank Commander or Tank Battalion or something simple and generic. And the thing is it's they're filming inside of the tank, but I can tell it's not inside of a tank because there's a lot of space, and most tanks do not have space. So it felt very weird, and I think it was meant to be during the Korean War, and it was just it was very dumb. And trying to think of this one other old film, I can't even remember the name, but it was all about some paratroopers, and for some reason one of the guys was like a loner or something like that, and every time anything bad happened, they blamed him on it. And they would just start yelling, like, oh, I don't trust that guy. And they're just like, shut up, idiot. I can't remember the title of it, but it was stupid. Like, you're going to have melodrama during D-Day? Really? That doesn't make any sense. But, I have seen bad war films. There aren't as many as there are good war films, so it's a little tricky. I mean, if I can think of bad westerns, I can think of quite a few, like low-balled, like westerns that were made during the 30s and 40s that tried to capitalize on better westerns, and of course, in the 60s and 70s, when spaghetti westerns got popular, like every other person just went into the either the desert in Spain or some area that had like a barren area and just started filming, and then said, "Hey, look, a spaghetti western." I'm like, that's not how you do it. But trying to think. I'm trying to think of some other it's hard to think of bad old war films. I mean, if there are some out there, I mean, I'm not against finding out about them, just so I can see if they're good or not. But I can think of a lot more good old war films than I can bad war films. I can think of good war films that have bad parts in them. Like, of course, there are two films I can think of that have John Wayne in it, like The Flying Tigers and the Flying Leathernecks. In both films, well, in Flying Tigers, they have this one guy who comes on and says, "Well, get me up on a plane and I'll do whatever you can, and I'm a hero." And the guy that's supposed to be the big hero, alongside like John Wayne, he's a complete asshole, like the whole movie, and he's treated as a hero even though he disobeys orders. In war you kind of have to follow orders. I mean, there are cases of disobeying orders was the right thing, but he just blatantly disobeys like orders that are actually not bad orders. He just doesn't like to listen to people, and he gets more people killed, but is still treated as a hero at the end. I never got that. And Flying Leathernecks has John Wayne and Robert Ryan's in it. And basically they're, Marines. They're the flight wing of the Marines, and I'm trying to think of the plot is that they want to try and do close air support for Marines on the ground. They're trying to perfect that. But, and then you see the rest of the crew, like the rest of the fighter pilots, and all of them in the movie, excluding John Wayne and Robert Ryan's and like one other character, who's, I think one of his older brother dies and he becomes a pilot too, sort of thing. But the rest of the pilots that they focus on, like the young Marines, like the entire movie, all they do is bitch and moan. And they're always complaining, they're always bitching. And of course, several of them are always disobeying orders and thinking like, hey, I did the right thing. And I'm like, no, you didn't. And like, rightly so, both John Wayne and Robert Ryan's character in the film say, hey, you did the wrong thing. Why did you do that? And they just don't get it. And I don't understand why all of them were just whiny little pussies. I mean, you guys are supposed to be Marines. And it's funny that like only the two like main like well-known actors are actually good pilots and they're good characters. The majority of the rest of the like Marine pilots, they all suck. And I don't really understand why they went that route of them all being whiny little bitches all the fucking time. I mean, you're supposed to be Marines. Like, I never understood that. It's like, it's a good, like, I like watching Flying Leathernecks, but that aspect of the film, of like the rest of the pilots always complaining and bitching, I don't understand that. I don't know why they went with that. It made no sense to me. But yeah, that there are some tropes in some older films where I'm like, why did they do this? Like, there's always like in some old films, they always have the character who like, objectively when you look at outside of it, they're a complete asshole and they should die instantly. But in the film, they're treated as like they're the greatest thing ever, and they get rewarded for doing all their terrible behavior, and I don't understand it. And it's true. I've seen in several films, like several old westerns, old war films, old action films. For some reason, they were just like, this guy's the huge, like, if you just took a step back, you're like, this is the worst human being on earth. Why are they being treated like they're a good person? Makes no sense. But I don't know. I'd have to like look into it to see if it was something that was like a conscious decision or was just unintentional, and people didn't catch on to it till later. I don't know. It is something I've noticed and would have to look into, but yeah, that's something that's always bugged me about some older films. Is like there's always the asshole character. There's some like characters that are just in between, that are just there, and then there's like one or two the good characters that are actually likable, and sometimes they die. Like, going back to Fighting Seabees, it's one of the few films where John Wayne actually dies. But an interesting thing is he has a hero's death where he dies to stop the Japanese in the movie, which it's one of those cool. It's one of those cool sequences in film, but there's a switch between when characters died in film, they always had a heroic death, compared to like once you hit the 70s, like when some heroes in films die, they don't always get heroic deaths. So, but I personally I don't mind either, because you're supposed to feel something when you're watching a film, and I don't mind having a good or bad feeling, as long as it provokes feeling in a good way to me. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't like it when the hero dies, but it's still as long as it was profound, either good or bad. But let's end it here for now. I'm going to try to get another video out either today or tomorrow. We'll see what happens, but I want to try to get this part 3 out, all about war films. My next one, since I mentioned westerns, I'll do a part 4 all about westerns, and there's something I have a lot to talk about. I always like talking about westerns or war films or anything in between. But just to always get it out there. I always like talking about these sort of things. But anyway, I want to thank you, the listener, for listening, and I hope to see you again. And let's see if I can work in a pretty... if you would like, could you please judge my John Wayne imitation I'm about to do? I'd like it if you could like and subscribe, and come back for more in the coming videos. Partner, ha ha ha. Is this me? I'm John Wayne. So, let me know what you thought about that, and hope to see you again. You have a good day.